Hello, my name is John Whitmore and welcome to my darkroom, aka the Dark Shed. And today I'm going to do a brief overview of what you need to set up your own darkroom and make a first print. So the first thing you need is some space that you can make light tight. This could be your bathroom, your garage, a shed, a tent, anywhere that you can make light tight. Next up, you need an enlarger. There are numerous types of enlarger, but as with film, they are split into the size of the format that you're looking to print. There's 35mm, 120, large format. If you get a large format enlarger, you can print sizes that are lower down, that are smaller. Just bear that in mind. Then they're also split into two categories. You can either have one that's a colour enlarger or a black and white only enlarger. Colour enlargers can also print black and white. An enlarger basically projects your negative down onto the photographic paper. This is my enlarger. I've got a DeVere 504, which is a large format enlarger. It can take up to 4x5 negatives. At the top you've got the head, which is where the light source is. In here there's a light box that diffuses the light, so you get a nice even spread of light over the negative. Next you have a place where the negative sits, usually in a negative carrier. That keeps the negative nice and flat. And then you have a set of bellows, which connected to that is where the lens sits. The bellows allow you to focus the image on the easel, which sits here. Most enlargers have an easel board, and then you'll put your own easel on top depending on the size of paper that you're printing to. So there are different types of easel available. This is a 4-blade easel, which enables you to independently set each edge, so you can set your board and stuff like that. This is the more basic type of easel, all in one for 8x10 paper. Simply slides in under here and gives you a nice even border around the edge. You have to use a different lens, focal length, dependent on the format of film that you're printing with. So 35mm you would use a 50mm lens, medium format around an 80mm lens depending on the size of medium format you're shooting, and large format would be a 150mm lens for 4x5. You can get 8x10 enlargers as well, they're massive. The light here is controlled by a timer. You can either do that simply with a switch that you turn on and off yourself using a stopwatch timer, or you can get more advanced timers like this stop clock timer here, which enables you to work in f-stops rather than seconds. They all fundamentally do the same thing. They turn the light on and off. To expose the image onto photographic paper, as we've discussed, the light passes through the negative, through the lens, and is enlarged onto the area where you're going to put your paper. To do this, you have to work under safe light, or if you're working in colour, you have to work in complete darkness because the paper is sensitive to all wavelengths. Let's talk about paper. There are different types of paper available for photographic printing in a darkroom. All of it is light sensitive, as previously mentioned. It's generally split into two categories. You've got your fibre-based paper and your resin-coated based paper. That's FB is fibre, RC is resin-coated. RC paper is a lot easier to deal with than the fibre based. It's quicker to process, and most significantly it's quicker to wash and dries really flat. Fibre paper is a more premium paper. It takes longer to process, it takes a lot longer to wash, and is more problematic when coming to drying. However, it's a beautiful thing. Different variations within these fundamental paper types include warm tone, you can get cool tone papers, but also the surface sheen on them. So whether they're glossy, they're pearl, or they're satin, different brands have different labelling for that. For those of you interested in colour printing, you need a special type of paper for that, RA4 paper. There's no multigrade, there's no contrast control over these paper types, and you need to use a different type of chemical, which is RA4 chemicals. Most modern papers are called MG, that's multi-grade paper. That means you can control the contrast of the image that's produced using a set of filters when exposing. For this enlarger here, I have what's called an under the lens filter set, and it's a little bracket that sits underneath the lens, and you place the filters within that dependent on the contrast level that you're after. Some enlargers have a tray that the filter set slides into. Your trays need to be the size of the paper that you're looking to print to. So here I've got some trays suitable for printing to 8x10 paper. You then put it through a chemical process. Anybody who's ever done film development will be familiar with this. There's a developer, a stop, a fix and a wash. You use tongs to transfer the paper between the different trays because you don't want to get it on your fingers. Once you've finished with the wash stage, you then need to dry your prints. That can be done on a drying rack like this, or they can be hung from the ceiling and pegged just to let them dry off. You can also get heaters and various other devices for this, but keeping it simple, you need a drying rack. You need to be able to time how long the paper is in each stage of the chemical process. For that, I simply use one of these, which is a really cheap kitchen timer. I've got a few of these kicking around. So let's make a first print, shall we? We're now working in a safe light. Got my enlarger set up. The first step is to set the size of the image that you want to create. So you do that by moving the head, and I'm printing onto 8x10 paper here. So first job is make sure your aperture is fully open. And here we've got the classic view of Machu Picchu in South America. Right, so once you've got the image the size that you want within the frame, you then have to focus. And to do that, you use what's called a micro focus finder, and that enables you to see the grain on the image. So as I look through this and rock the focus backwards and forwards, I can see the grain coming in and out of focus. And once it's in focus, I then just lock it off on the enlarger. So we've got our image set up on the enlarger, we know it's the right size and it's in focus. The next thing to do is create a test strip. That is done to determine the exposure that we're going to use as our base exposure when creating the whole image. And we do that by cutting up full pieces of paper, scissors, into smaller strips. So paper goes back in the box, and then we've got our test strip available for calculating the exposure. So we have the strip over the print, like so. The exposure time is determined by the negative, the size of the print you're doing, the type of paper you're using, the chemicals you're using are all have an effect. And the test strip is created by simply moving the card over the paper to block the light. So once we've done the test strip, it goes into the developer and we start our timer. The time in the developer is also dependent on the paper type, the chemical and the temperature of the chemical as well. You may wish to change the contrast at this point as well. Your contrast will be based on the aesthetic you're looking for and the negative that's being used. It may take a couple of test strips to get to the point that you need to be. So once you've got your test strip done and you're happy with the range of exposures, you can choose your exposure that you're going to do. Dial that into your timer. It's connected to the enlarger. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then you can do a full-size print. Now at this stage is where you would do any additional steps during the exposure. So if you needed to do any dodging, any burning, split grading, all these advanced techniques are available for adjusting the image at the exposure point. into the developer tray and start the timer. There are other techniques that you can use to manipulate your final image. They include dodging and burning, split grade printing, creating masks, composites, and you can tone the final print as well. And there we have it, all you need to create your first darkroom print. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you've got any questions or comments, please get in touch and follow along on my social media channels and also on my website.